Welcome everybody. Welcome all of you from social media, YouTube, the greater global world. We're here at the Big Cannabis Show. We're doing this show today to bring the light into an area of investment that we think is an incredible opportunity. And I've been super lucky to have two of the greatest innovators in this industry right now on our show. And so the purpose of our show today is to educate you guys on what opportunities are out there for investors, what change we can make in society through our investments, because I am an activist investor. So many of the themes that I invest in not only are for profit, which obviously is the main goal of an investment, but also to make change. And in the case of cannabis, even make social change. So I'm super excited today to have Kim Rivers here from Trulieve Corporation, probably one of the biggest cannabis companies in the United States. And then Jason Wild from JW Asset Management, but TerrAscend, who, oversees several cannabis businesses and probably one of the more aggressive investors in the cannabis space. Super knowledgeable people about what's going on. That's what we're here to do, is give you the information you need to understand these investments better, because I think there's a tremendous amount of confusion right now in the marketplace about investing in cannabis, because the companies that most people are buying today are actually Canadian companies. So in this weird world that we live in, Canadian companies that sell cannabis are allowed to trade on the New York Stock Exchange, and investors at every brokerage firm can buy and sell them freely. But U.S. cannabis companies can only trade in Canada, ironically. And with that creates lots of issues for investors to buy these stocks. So one of the issues you might face right off the bat is, can I even buy this stock? Because my broker won't let me. Why? Because of some arbitrary laws or rules. So every firm has different policies with these stocks. So part of the goal today is to have you guys reach out to your investment firms if you can't buy these stocks and say, hey, why can't we buy these stocks? We want to buy them. We're also going to learn a little bit more about their backgrounds and a little bit more about the issues facing the industry and what the goals of their companies are. And most importantly, we're going to talk a little bit about cannabis and innovation as well, like what's actually happening in the business. Us old school, like sort of joint roller and bong smokers, like cannabis has grown into this like enormous product business, consumer products business. It reminds me a lot of, like a Nestle or Mondelez back in the day, where it's not just about or even what Pepsi became, where Pepsi, was like made drinks, but then it moved into snacks and all these other products that grew into wonderful businesses and industries. And that's what we're starting to see with cannabis, is really a depth of product choices, as well as a sophistication in marketing and packaging and production that I really have never seen in such an early stage, business. So let's get started. First, why don't we start with Kim? Women first, of course. I'm old fashioned, so we'll start with Kim. Kim, I don't know what got you involved with the cannabis industry, and when did you get involved with Trulieve?
So I'm an original founder with Trulieve, and
cool.
I literally, have the paper cut scars to prove it. In writing the application, that was about 2,000 pages for our application in the state of Florida. So I got involved very early.
When was this?
That was 2015.
Okay.
So yeah, 2014, and then 2015 is when I.
So when did Florida approve medical marijuana? So
that was in 2000. So the first bill was 2015, kind of fun fact. And then the amendment was approved in 2017.
So you jumped right into this thing.
Yep. I jumped right in.
What caused you to jump into this, and what were you doing before?
Well, sure. So as I said, I'm a recovering lawyer. It's day by day. It's a struggle. I have my 9-step or whatever program that I go through. And so I had left the practice of law. I was doing M&A and securities law, and had become an entrepreneur full time. Was involved in a number of different businesses, a number of different startups surrounding tech and hospitality primarily. Had just had a successful exit in was approached by a team of folks here in Florida who were growers, who were nursery operators. You had to be a nursery operator that had a 30-year business to qualify for marijuana application.
Oh, so you had to be in business 30 years?
Yes. So multi-generational nursery operators. And they asked if I would be interested in joining the team. And I gave a typical lawyer answer. I said, it depends. And we spent 6 months traveling the country, trying to understand the business opportunity, the consumer opportunity, and just getting a feel for whether or not, this was something that we thought was one, legitimate, and two, scalable. And so that's really how I entered. And I would say that I was in the business probably about 6 months before I really got a full appreciation of the most important aspect of the business, which is how we affect people's lives. And, after we got operational, we were awarded the license, got open.
So you started with one dispensary.
Yeah, well,
and
we started with a few dispensaries off the bat in true Trulieve fashion, I would say. So our first dispensary was in Tallahassee, Florida. Right. And so, and that was before the amendment had passed. So we were just a CBD, THC right to try for very medically compromised patients initially. And fun fact, we opened the doors of the first dispensary in the state to sell the first product. And we realized that we didn't have any patients. And so we literally medically transported, the first patient that purchased cannabis in the state of Florida was medically transported from 2 hours away to make the sale. Big press event. Patient zero. It was a wonderful event. And then we looked at each other and we're like, oh my God, now what do we do? Because that was the first day. Yeah.
Happiest customer of all time.
That's right. That's right. So we side by side, along with the advocate community, along with the medical community, really see ourselves as walking, alongside, those two groups and building the program, certainly in the state of Florida and in other markets as well, because it takes a lot of education and, a lot of work to get folks into the program and then to develop it to where we are now. And I mean, you fast forward, Florida is growing at a rate of approximately 5,000 patients per week now. Nice. We just surpassed the 500,000 patient mark in Florida, and other programs too, like Pennsylvania, where we operate, which Jason and TerrAscend operate as well. Very robust patient program with over, 400,000 patients there. So
let me go back to Florida for a minute. So Florida is one of the most exciting states right now for growth. And, part of it is because of, the COVID policies and the tax policies have been really, beneficial to businesses in Florida. It kind of works out that you guys are the major player in Florida, right? So Trulieve is a really Florida focused company right now. And I assume you are the biggest player in Florida, right?
Yeah, so we enjoy approximately 50 to 52% of the market share in Florida, and
so basically half of the legal weed market in Florida.
My goal, which we're approaching, I think, is to sell a ton of flower a week. We're close.
Wow. So Pablo Escobar would be jealous. He's like, wow, you got 50% market share. And so like when you think about like the future, so Florida, it's kind of weird. It's not recreationally legal in Florida, especially in a state like Florida, where pretty much anything is legal. You can even like get COVID and kill yourself at a club right now, but you can't buy weed. So what does it look like in Florida from a recreational side? Because I assume that would be a huge boost for your business.
Sure. I mean, there's 130 million tourists that visit Florida per year. We have 21 million people, right? Residents. And so certainly that would be huge. We have 2 ballot initiatives that are working their way through the courts now. So for 2022, so it would be either 2022 or 2024. It's polling extremely well. There's legal hurdles that it has to get through, but I think it'll be a ballot-led initiative. I mean, you also have to remember that Florida is a very conservative and a very red state.
Right.
So it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, actually, our medical marijuana program was Republican-led.
I've noticed that Republicans smoke as much weed as Democrats. In my career, I've noticed. So I don't look at it as a political issue. It might be more a religious issue than a political issue. So like the sin concept, the same people are against online gambling and gambling are against cannabis. So I kind of think that's the roots of it more than per se politics, because what I've learned from Republicans, is they care more about money than anything else. So, it's like, why would they stop cannabis when it helps their state? So plus the growing states, you know, like tobacco isn't a great business. You know, the farms already struggle to make money. It's not an easy business. So it seems like an obvious thing to help red states.
Yeah. I mean, and it's polling. I mean, we just ran a poll 2 months ago. And I mean, medical cannabis is polling at all-time highs of 90%. I mean, we can't get folks to agree that Mother's Day is a good holiday at 90% approval rating, right? I mean, that's an incredible number. And so and that crosses all kinds of party lines, right? So I think that you're right. I think, and I also think it's a matter of time, right? As folks realize that the sky hasn't fallen, right? This has not been a problem. It actually has, you know, boosted economies where we go and where we put stores. Businesses around our stores thrive. We're a traffic attractor. I mean, we just had a grand opening of our 77th location in Florida last weekend, and you know, there were 60 people waiting for us to open the doors. So as you said, I mean, it's a little bit of a different state with respect to our open laws than others, but yeah, I mean, I do think that it's only a matter of time, and we're going to get there, like I said, and I think it's 22 or 24.
Yeah, I hope it's 22 because I find the sort of like medical recreational battle to be a little bit annoying. You know, it's like, once again, we can buy so many drugs at CVS of various strengths and whatever. And it's like we're breaking down these barriers that essentially existed for nefarious reasons in my mind. And so, you know, it's like, we got to wind our way through this political process. So hopefully it'll wind quicker because it'll be better for everybody in the way I see it.
Yeah, and you certainly see, obviously, there's pressure, right, as you know, changes happening around us, and you know, I think that's true for the entire Southeast. I mean, really, when you look at the Southeast and you look at the map, I mean, we're in a little bit of a cannabis desert, right? But that's starting to shift. So, you know, I mean, Georgia program's coming online, Alabama's coming online. You know, you look at Virginia, you know, Texas, fingers crossed. So, I mean, I do think that there's.
Yeah, I think Virginia just passed it real quickly out of nowhere, right?
They did, although they gave a longer lead time for implementation. So it's not
like 2 years or something.
Right? Yeah, 2 years. So I think, you know, I mean, I think that as those kind of, you know, chips start to fall, I do think that there will be, you know, acceleration in terms of the conversation. You know, and I mean, we're hopeful for that. I mean, we're strategically located. We're in the very northern part of Florida, so we've got a lot of connectivity to those surrounding markets.
So is the basic strategy of Trulieve right now you're Florida focused and now you're starting to branch out into other states, or is it really just like we want to dominate Florida?
So no, I mean, we'll certainly always be Florida focused. I mean, Florida is an incredible market, right? I mean, we're a profit leader. I mean, we've had the you know, we believe in EBITDA in a very real way. I mean,
you run your stores well, that's for sure.
Yeah, we posted approximately 50% EBITDA margins for 11 straight quarters. So you know, Florida definitely gives us that opportunity to have profitability for expansion and for growth. We definitely see the U.S. landscape as it's shifting through a hub and distribution model. And so, you know, clearly Florida is our Southeast hub. That's clear, right? 2 million square feet of grow, 550 something SKUs, a lot of stores. So next is Northeast. And so we just closed 2 acquisitions in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is an important market because there is no limitation on the amount of cultivation or processing you can have, but you have to be on analogous parcels. In other Northeast states, there are.
Just to stop you with Pennsylvania, this is also where Jason and TerrAscend is heavily invested, right? In Pennsylvania and now New Jersey and these markets. So shifting from the Southeast, where you know essentially Florida is the hub, right? Now you got the Northeast opening up, right? So Pennsylvania, what is the first state that really is big in the Northeast that people are doing stuff, and now you've got Jersey, right? And so tell me about these markets. And maybe Jason wants to jump in too.
Yeah, and I'll certainly defer to Jason on the Northeast as well.
Keep going, Kim.
I was just going to say.
I know, she's good. She's good.
Massachusetts certainly, I would say, is the first state that kind of everyone, right? That was the first open market really in the Northeast. Now there are a lot of issues. No, Massachusetts was first. And then PA.
There are huge, right? Like it's just off the chart.
Well, I mean, Massachusetts, the problem with Massachusetts is you have 100,000 square foot canopy limitation and you can only have 3 co-located stores. And so your restriction in terms of what you can do as a company, the market may be, and I always tell people this, right? The market may look like, oh my gosh, but they have, 5 billion people. That's great. But if I can only produce X and I can only sell Y, guess what? The market is X and Y. It's not.
So there's just only so much weed you can buy in Massachusetts, basically?
Yeah. I mean, and so there's been, some product shortages and some other things happening.
So they drive to Pennsylvania.
Right, that's right. So then they go to Pennsylvania. And so, in Pennsylvania, Jason's got a ton of experience, obviously, in Pennsylvania, and they're doing a phenomenal job. But we look at the Northeast as the next hub for us.
Right.
And it's how do we get scale? How can we get to a place where we have, where it makes sense? Because of the tax laws, because of 280E, because of the cost of capital, we have to run these businesses in a very financially responsible way.
Now, do you want to explain 280E to people? Because I don't think people understand. It's sort of like a discriminatory policy against cannabis companies that exists solely to discriminate against cannabis companies in the United States. Like, it seems really dumb, this law. So how does this law work? Where did it come from?
So 280E is the tax policy that the federal government uses to tax illegal businesses. So basically,
hold on. So there's actually a law,
yes,
that the government has that says if you're running an illegal business, here's how you file taxes.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Who in God's name came up with this? Like,
so your local heroin dealer will also be taxed under 280E. Yes, that's true.
It's like, who passed this? Who passed this?
I haven't gone back into
Jim Crow stuff. It must have been McConnell. It's got to be Mitch McConnell.
It was before Mitch McConnell.
They got Al Capone on taxes, right? I mean,
that's right.
They got him for tax evasion. That's different than creating a specific law just to hurt illegal businesses and make them pay more taxes.
And so we're taxed a significantly higher rate, to answer your question. So last year, we paid approximately $70 million in taxes, in federal taxes. We would have paid $40 million less had we been taxed.
So you're illegal, but you actually gave the federal government $70 million. Correct. So they're calling you illegal, but we'll take $70 million in taxes. Federal tax. We're not even talking state here, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a hypocrisy we've
done here. To make it worse, right, we can't take any normalized business deductions. So, or accelerated like depreciation. Think about all the construction.
Like if you go to dinner, you can't write it off?
No. No.
So basically you just pay tax on 100% revenue, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very, very high number. And so it's definitely, as I say, that combined with, the issues that we have on banking, it's really, you're running a business with two arms tied behind your back, because you're paying more in taxes, and then you don't have kind of normal rates in terms of your cost of capital, because there's no, banks, kind of big banks that will do business with us, no federally chartered
they tell us we can't even have clients that are in the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, there's like 100,000 people in California with jobs in the cannabis industry. And it's like, I don't know, like who made these laws. And then I've heard recently that FinCEN's been poking around. It's like, well, what the hell? Okay, it's legal in my state. And I think this is like a Supreme Court case waiting to happen, because if they come and bother me, like, I will not take it, because it is legal in my state. And it's like, I'm federally oversight, but I deal in the state, and I'm only federally oversight because we're so big. But if I was smaller, I'd only be state oversight. So maybe I could do it then, and it's like, this is the hypocrisy that bothers me, not as much as the Jim Crow part of the law, but it bothers me a lot. So in one sense, we have this legal framework that says federally it's illegal, but state says it's legal. I'm a federalist. I believe that states' rights supersede federal rights in this case. I just believe that. So without interstate commerce, I don't think the feds have any say. And so it's like, from my perspective, then they take your money, and now they're jailing minority people for this left and right. There couldn't be a more abused law in America. Like, really, when you think about it, right? I don't know. Tell me, Jason. Tell me, Jason. What in God's name? You're a pharmacist. You grew up in a nice family of pharmacists. You're I guess you're selling legal drugs already, right? And then you what got you into cannabis?
I got a call from a Canadian banker up in 2014 that said, "Hey, we're raising money for this company Metrum. They just got one of these medical cannabis licenses up here." I was like, "Wow, I'd never been in a legal or an illegal grow, and I thought it was an interesting trip to take."
And you're too young to have gone to Woodstock, so
Exactly.
Did you tell your parents? You're like, I'm pivoting here from our family pharmacy business, into a new kind of pharmacy.
No, I think I waited a little to tell them that.
I still haven't told my parents.
So, and then I went up there for the visit, and I realized that they gave me a little primer in all the true uses, medical uses that cannabis is used for. And I agree with you in terms of medical and rec. I don't really love that terminology. I like to, maybe it's because I'm a pharmacist, but it's to me, it's more like prescription and over the counter. Either way, I believe it's medicine. Either way, it's important to have, high quality products, because people are, putting these things in their body, whether they're inhaling.
Yeah, for sure.
And even if it's for somebody who comes home, who consumes cannabis every night, instead of taking, to relax, instead of taking a Prozac.
Yeah, like this ambient stuff is like garbage. I mean, people take this stuff and it blows kind of my mind, because it's really actually bad for you. And like like a 1-to-1 CBD THC, like I was on Twitter talking to this guy about the medical benefits of CBD, because I believe that cannabis is helpful to people. I don't think it's like a cure-all for everything, but like there's no question issues like stress and sleep, like the CBD THC 1-to-1, it's helpful. It just is, and like people are like, oh, what do you know? I go, because I use it. I know. Okay. I can tell you that it works. Okay. I use the products I invest in. I drive a Tesla. Okay. And I can tell you that, and I've seen it work wonders with people, actually, especially like really uptight people, like a little CBD and THC in the tongue, and much easier to deal with, I mean, God, if they gave it to everybody in New York for a day, it would be the best city in the world.
Well, that's the thing. If somebody takes it for stress, that could be considered rec. To me, you're still treating a condition. It's the condition, but it's still a condition. So
like people drink, they go home and they drink. Like it's super harmful for you. Like I don't understand why people don't understand. Like, what's a hangover? It's like your body is unhappy with the poison that you put in you. That's what a hangover is, And so when you think about, I'm home, I've had a long day of trading stocks that are down, I could like pound, a shot of tequila or have some CBD THC. It's like, it's no brainer what's better for you.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is just the stigma that's been created, or based upon all of the, the government has pushed out all this propaganda for so many years. That's, earlier you're talking about Republicans and Democrats. To me, it's more of a generational issue than it is.
Totally. But in a way it isn't, because like now the older group of people in our society, the boomers, were the original partiers. So like there's a lot of disrespect, I think, that millennials give boomers. Like it's a saying, like, okay, boom. They call us Gen Xers boomers as an insult, and I'm like, Gen X is the greatest generation, so you guys should back off a little bit. Like, but boomers, like when you go back to, like I was showing my kid a video, like I named one of my kids after Jimi Hendrix. And like, so I was showing him Woodstock the other day. He's 5 now. So I thought it was time, now that he's 5, to see Woodstock. And so I was showing him the Star Spangled Banner and Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. And when you think that was our parents, naked in the mud, smoking weed, listening to Hendrix, like there shouldn't be a taboo anymore for cannabis. But that taboo was built over generations of misinformation and propaganda against minorities and African Americans. I mean, there's a long history of how cannabis was demonized as the devil's weed or whatever. And, it's like, because I'm a big jazz music guy too. So they used to like say it was like the weed and the jazz, was the bad, it was like bad. And so they like created this stigma. It's a racist thing, basically. And so if you create a racist behavior that has some sort of shinier veneer over it, that's what Jim Crow laws are. And that's what this is. Okay. So that's why the taboo really bothers me. Okay. It's because in a way, when people are like, oh, you smoke weed. And I was like, yeah. So, like, and I remember when Elon got in trouble for smoking weed with Joe Rogan on a podcast. I say in trouble because the media were like freaked out, and he doesn't even really smoke weed, And I was sitting here thinking, like, I go on Emily Chang at Bloomberg, and she's like, oh my God, Elon smoked weed on a podcast. And I said, Les Moonves, the CEO of CBS or whatever was raping people. Like, let's try to keep things in perspective of CEO behavior here. Okay. Nobody cares if the CEO of Jim Beam is like, I like Jim Beam. Who cares? Who cares?
Right.
So that's my thing with the Sigma. So tell me more about what's happening in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, because the way I see the Northeast is as these states open, all the states have to open because you can drive 15 minutes from state to state.
Yeah, absolutely. The dominoes are definitely going to be falling. New Jersey, the voters passed rec. I think it was 67% voted for it back in November. That'll be implemented by the end of this year.
This year, you can't really operate yet in New Jersey.
You can operate under medical. But,
under medical.
The rec kicks in where you don't need a prescription.
So end of the year, January 1st, New Jersey goes fully rec.
Sometime around the end of the year. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that should make the other dominoes fall. New York is talking about it. Pennsylvania is talking about it. Connecticut. Especially because all these states have these holes in their budget from COVID. So
yeah, it's like such an well, you got holes in your budget and you got holes in the retail market. You guys are the only guys taking retail space of any industry I can name. So like when you think about how do I help real estate and the retail business come back alive, because not only if I open a cannabis dispenser, I can open an ice cream store and a pizza place, and I can open all kinds of stores around it that benefits, just like the Tesla supercharger thing. If you put a Tesla supercharger, a cannabis store, an ice cream store, a pizza place, boy, you got a cool place to hang out. And I think that model saves retail. I don't think one industry can save it, but it certainly helps a lot with somebody coming in and saying, hey, I can do this and you won't get busted anymore,
Absolutely.
So that's part of it for me too. It's economic in that cannabis is one of those industries. So like with online gambling, I just released a piece on Forbes of the different, because I'm investing in the things that used to be legal. That's kind of the theme. So we're investors in online gambling. We have a position in MGM, and one of the things about it, it's kind of crazy. You don't need that many people to run an online gambling operation. It's just technology. So it's a great thing for profits, but it doesn't create many jobs.
Right.
Okay. In fact, it probably people lose their job gambling probably more than jobs it create. Where with cannabis, you've got everything from the farmer to the people packaging, right? To distribution, trucks, whatever, planes, to retail, employment, right? And you have employees on all levels of the food chain. So we're like a tech company will just have basically high-end programmers at $150,000, $200,000 salaries, educated people, great, helps very narrow group of people that are already in high demand. With cannabis, you're employing people of all different, education and wealth levels in that process. So this industry, as it builds out, it's really a traditional industry where tech helps you reach your customers, but it employs people with real jobs at all levels. And I think that's what makes cannabis such an important economic driver for states, especially in trouble.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was just going to say, 100%. We hired 1,000 people during this last year during the pandemic. So we
recently hired 1,000 people.
Yeah. And
so how many employees work at Trulieve now?
So just over 5,000.
5,000. You have 5,000 employees. Okay, we're doing a little spot here for you.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yeah. You guys are putting this stuff on. It's going to make me, want to leave work early. It's like, no, and I think what these things show is like just the quality of the product is amazing now. So you have 5,000 employees. With benefits, paying payroll taxes and all this kind of stuff.
All of the things. We actually just changed over our healthcare policy in the middle of COVID to make sure that all of our employees, including our part-time employees, could have some level of healthcare coverage and could see a doctor, whether it be telemedicine or through a CVS or what have you. So we just reinvested in our employees quite a bit.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But yeah, and the point of that was not, we're one example, right? But as an industry, and I think that this is a point you're making, it's not only that it's across different pay scales, but there's also opportunity, right? Because we are forging new paths. And so folks that come in in a starting position, a starting role with Trulieve, now are some of our best managers, right? That have been with us for 3 or 4 years. And quite frankly, they're so far ahead because this industry is starved for experienced talent. And we're all pulling from lots of other analogous industries to kind of, shore up our talent pool. And, when I think about, we just announced a partnership with Morehouse through, an internship program, and we're going to be developing curriculum with them because we need this next generation to learn, because yes, it is traditional, but there are also very specific nuances and skills that are important, right, for the cannabis industry and for, our business's success. And so this really
is quite an opportunity. When you get into the growing side, the genetic side, this gets really, really cool and like complex and scientific. Like I started studying these, like the strains and like, I'm not that, I was like, oh, indica, sativa. But then when you start really diving into the genetics, one of the coolest things about cannabis is its roots go back to, biblical times, like Afghanistan, for example, has some of the best weed in the world and original strains that go back to Afghanistan. You start thinking about, like, wow, you're going back thousands of years in history with some of these strains of cannabis and how, the genetics have been, I guess,
the landrace strains, right? And how everything has been, bred and now we're into, obviously the terpenes and the flavonoids and the minor cannabinoids and isolation of all of that and how we're best utilizing the different parts of the plants for different formulations, which, to your point earlier, right? When we talk about product development, you talk about, becoming a CPG company and all of the diversification that can happen. And there's still so much research to do and
so much.
And so the opportunity for folks to come in and really make their mark on this industry is enormous. And so
see, my wife is in plant medicine as well, and she makes products around. They're all natural products, and they've looked at making CBD and cannabis related products with their facial products. Wildling.com is her company, and one of the things she's taught me. My wife is very smart. She taught me about the value of plants. And the fact that almost every plant in the world, if not every plant, has many benefits, not just like, oh, we clean the air, but medicinal benefits. So most medicine actually comes from natural sources. And it goes back in history from just natural plant-based medicine to how we find modern medicines are oftentimes from natural solutions. And the cannabis plant actually is one of the most incredible plants in society, like it's ever happened. And the fact we know so little, like I didn't even know what a terpene was until like a year ago, and I was like, what is this? Oh, it's the little things here at the end of the weed. Oh, the gold part, like what does all this gold part do? So you start like doing research and then you start looking at what the terpenes do and what their potential health benefits are. And with traditional cannabis, like when you smoke, you get basically like 99% THC and a little bit of CBD and a little bit of terpenes. But what we're learning is that little bit has a lot of medicinal benefit. And if we adjust that ratio, we can maybe get even more benefit for each, unit of high, or whatever you want to call it. And that's the part I think we're learning that is so potentially groundbreaking. Like what can happen, maybe you start solving disorders and especially nervous disorders, twitches, things like that, where people, who knows, but like, oh, we don't want to study it because the federal government said it's illegal. Not good. So have you seen any things or tell me a little bit about products that are doing well? Like in Florida, what's the product mix? I know flower is kind of new to Florida, right?
It's a year. I mean, it's a year.
Okay.
In Florida. And so, I mean, flower makes up, and so our state reports weekly on dispensations in Florida across 2 categories, basically oil and flower, across all companies as well. And so it's about 50-50 in terms of the split between flower and oil products in general. Are
people still vaping, or has that vape thing kind of come and gone now and vaping's back to where it should be?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that we did not experience the radical change in the vape trajectory that other markets did.
I think it was mostly because those were just illegal vapes.
So I think that's more that that was definitely more of a West Coast kind of phenomenon. A bit. Vapes are still extremely popular. in Florida. That's, on the oil side, that's the most popular product. We're also seeing an uptick though of interest in our, we released a line of nano products, which are fast onset, higher level of bioavailability. So what that means is that when you take something orally, the classic edible problem, right? You take an edible, you're sitting there, you're like 45 minutes. Oh, maybe it's not working. Let me take some more, right? And then you're in the corner for, 5 hours.
Yeah, you're in the corner for the rest of the night. Okay, that's the problem with edibles.
That's the problem with edibles, right? Traditionally or historically. And so with the nano product, you can ingest it orally. Onset's about 15 or 20 minutes. So you can then titrate more appropriately, but your bioavailability remains that of an oral product, meaning it's a higher level of bioavailability. So it lasts, a longer period of time than a vape or something going in through your lungs. And so we have different flavored powders that you can mix in liquids. We also have putting that into some of our edible products. And so that's been really, really popular for folks who are, again, want more of that controlled titration when they're ingesting something orally. So that's
and also having it come on quicker,
that's exactly
the problem with edibles,
what you're dealing with.
Sort of like, am I high yet? Maybe I'll have more, and then it's like, no, you shouldn't have done that. And then it's a night of, like Cat Stevens and you're asleep. So it's like, I think seriously. So I think that's a huge breakthrough because, like, from a health perspective, like smoking maybe isn't the best way to do it, although I haven't really seen many issues with it. But like, if I could have some sort of edible that came on quicker and was more controllable, I think that's a winner. So let's go back to Jason for a minute. So TerrAscend set up a little bit differently than Trulieve, where Trulieve is really a dominant player in one market and now going to other market. TerrAscend's really kind of, focuses on specific. I mean, you guys really focus on specific markets where you have an edge or an opportunity, and you're much more strategic, I think, in the way you're picking your markets and building your business. Is that a correct assessment?
Sure. I mean, I think I've commented many times that I sort of learned from Kim in terms of seeing what Trulieve was doing in Florida in terms of really going deep and focusing and not being spread too thin and being an inch deep and a mile wide. TerrAscend is in a few more places. In terms of, I'll just back up quickly and sort of tell you where it all started. Originally, TerrAscend was what's considered a Canadian LP, the ones that everybody sort of bashes that they're the ones that can list on the U.S. exchanges and they trade up every time there's good news about something in the U.S., which is pretty ridiculous. But we started as a Canadian LP, and then it sort of hit me in the middle of 18. The whole market, the biggest market is the U.S. U.S. is the largest market in practically every industry, and it definitely is in cannabis as well. And that's what made us pivot into the U.S. We were pretty much the only Canadian company to pivot into the U.S., which sort of surprises me because all of the other ones, they didn't want to do it because they wanted to list on the U.S. exchanges or
Well, it gave them access to capital and it gave them 2x valuation over your companies.
Right, but it was, to me, it always goes back to like the Warren Buffett saying, short term the market is a voting machine and long term it's a weighing machine. And I knew that we had to build a company based upon the weighing machine. And I didn't care if that meant that we would carry a lower multiple.
Well, and from an investment perspective, that got me interested because it was a pain to get your stocks originally. Like I know there's an arbitrage here just when you move to the U.S. exchange and just when any institution can buy your stock. Like there's only one direction it can go from that point,
Absolutely.
So it's a little bit like Bitcoin in that, so few people and institutions own it. Just the fact that a few get involved and all of a sudden now like everybody wants to get involved and the value just soars because all of a sudden there's actually access. And that's one of the things that I think is holding back the cannabis industry right now. Just the access and cost to capital is 2x other companies that are much shittier than cannabis companies, so like it's crazy actually the like rate you can earn loaning money to a cannabis company or like IIPR makes on a cap rate to a cannabis. I mean, it's like crazy returns. We've made a lot of money on IIPR just based off the 13% cap rates they're getting. And it pays a 3% dividend. So think of that arbitrage for them, and so it's like, they got this huge valuation because they're listed in the US because they don't touch flowers, but they literally own every building your flowers in. It's another crazy thing, right? So for investors, I think that's something important to know.
Not TerrAscend. I don't know about Trulieve's either, but you know,
you guys would have better access to capital. But when you think about, a lot of these cannabis companies, they owned a building because nobody would rent to them anyways. You know, what's the point of having a $5 million building when you're trying to expand? So they sell it off. But now you're stuck with a rent that's pretty high, relative to if you were just like any other company. Because now you could go to rent a store or a warehouse for half of what it used to be a year ago. It's like the retail guys would like beg you to take a store,
Right, absolutely. And the companies that were doing all of these sale leasebacks, it was because it was so hard to raise equity.
Yeah.
The Canadian companies ended up bringing down all the U.S. ones in terms of their stock performance.
And I still get a deal every day from, Beacon or Del Morgan or somebody. Every day there's a deal of a cannabis company raising 20, 30, 50 million. And the terms are very advantageous. And, I'm sort of like, wow, like this can't last forever if these businesses, do well, because, the yields and the returns and the warrants and everything is very opportunistic time because of these sort of arbitrary laws that create barriers to entry.
Yeah. But that's all. The cost of capital has certainly gone down, especially since the Georgia election in January. I mean, we were shocked. We raised money last May, and it was we raised $37 million, and it I'm not going to say it wasn't super difficult, but it wasn't the easiest thing. And then in January, this past January, a few months ago, we went out to raise $50 million. And we had like $200 million in demand after 5 phone calls. It was just completely different, and without warrant coverage and less of a discount. So that is getting better. Debt rates are not going down as much as I feel like they should.
No, I mean, I saw what you just borrowed at, and I was like, that's absurd. Yeah. Like it's absurd. I mean, come on, credit's like they give credit to like Nicola. It's like, come on. Like there's companies in the stock market that doesn't even have $1 revenue, like Virgin Galactic, and they've raised billions, and like they'll never get this fucking plane off the ground to save their lives, and like here we've got these great profitable businesses with 40 and 50% margins borrowing at 13%. What a joke. It's like, it's a joke.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, that's kind of why we're here today. It's like, I'm going to do this until the joke ends, because it's an opportunity. I'm a capitalist, but B, it's like an opportunity that's completely like self-created, having nothing to do with the business, like nothing to do with the business. It's just the law. So let me finish with TerrAscend, and I want to get into federal.
I was going to tell you in terms of the specific states. So we did, I looked. TerrAscend came into the U.S. Our first acquisition was in California. Biggest.
You started in California, huh?
Started in California, but the Apothecarium, which is this beautiful chain of stores, and
So tell us about Apothecarium, because we're a California-based company. We have lots of fans here in California. Apothecarium, super nice. It's based in the Bay Area. We have a huge following in the Bay Area. Tell us about it.
I think you might be showing video of Las Vegas.
Yeah, we're showing video of it right now. They're super nice stores.
Yeah, exactly. So super nice stores in San Francisco. Some of the earlier stores, and considered like the earliest really nice stores. They had 3 locations in San Francisco. Over the last year, we've opened another 2, one in Berkeley and one in Capitola, which I've never been to myself.
Cool place.
But once we got into California, and through the Because I Wear fund manager hat a certain percentage of the day, and we see a lot of deals. I started seeing all these deals on the East Coast, where these companies had much better margins, had better growth rates. They were less mature markets, therefore they were growing more quickly, and most of them were more fully vertically integrated. In California, there's a strong wholesale market. You can buy lots of different products. You can just open up own dispensaries. Dispensaries are usually in the 20-ish% EBITDA margin range. But on the East Coast, you have these fully vertically integrated licenses, and they're so much harder to get because they're licensed states, as opposed to just the West Coast.
That's kind of your thing. You like the hard to get licenses that create a moat for you.
Exactly. So that's where we focused. We had applied ourselves in New Jersey back in 2018, in the summer of 18. Unfortunately, we won that license. There were 146 applications for 6 licenses. I think we had the second highest score. out of those that group, and they give us Northern New Jersey, which is a split Jersey into North, Mid, and South, and Northern Jersey has the biggest population. So we're happy to get that. We have finally opened up New Jersey.
Now, how far is it for a New Yorker to go get weed in New Jersey besides going under the lake or the river?
Well, they need right now it's only medical, so they'd have to get a
they'd have to have a doctor thing still too.
But once rec comes, there will certainly I'm sure.
I remember when California was medical, we'd go to this doctor down the street. He was like 1,000 years old, and this guy was like, writing medical, and he was like, checking me or whatever. He's like, and I was like, dude, are you okay? Like maybe I should be checking you out, buddy. You're like 1,000 years old. Meanwhile, the guy was like raking it in,
Yeah.
And I kind of find the whole medical side of it, once again, I think most doctors are scared to prescribe it. And then, it's just like you get to this, sort of weird hypocrisy with it, but whatever.
Yeah. It's all changing, I think.
It's like the first step, and then it's like, okay, we don't need these like doctors writing notes.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Exactly. And then
doctors like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Pennsylvania, we acquired our way into Pennsylvania in the summer of 2019. We bought a company called Ilera Healthcare. They were number one in market share on the cultivation and manufacturing side. You don't have to be fully vertically integrated like you do, say, in Florida. Florida, you can only sell
sell from your stuff.
So we really like this asset, and they were pretty much in 100% of the dispensaries in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of the best medical market states. What I really like are the medical states where you can eat while you dream, meaning you can make money and be profitable and have good growth under the medical program. And then when rec comes, it's just gravy on top of that. Florida is a great example. Pennsylvania is a great example.
Right.
Great example of that. So Pennsylvania, we acquired that about a little more than a year and a half ago, and we have pretty much quadrupled our capacity there over the last year or so.
We've got Northern California, we've got New Jersey, we've got Pennsylvania.
Yep, and then we have Maryland. We have a deal that we signed with Trulieve. They needed to divest one of their grows because they were buying grassroots, and we bought that facility, or we had a deal to buy that, and hopefully that ownership will transfer and be approved in the next couple of months. And in terms of it's similar to Trulieve's approach, maybe a little wider, but it is my view is if you're more focused as opposed to being having flags in the map in 20 different states. If you're more focused, you have a better chance of winning, just because there's only so much mind share that people can have for running a business well. And if you're more focused, you're also going to build bigger facilities and have more scale. And
brand leverage. I think and brand leverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I'm advertising in Pennsylvania, I can get more sales for those views than, like Trulieve would be the ideal, because if you're anywhere in Florida, there's a store. And so it's like, if they're doing Florida-based advertising, I don't even know if you're legally allowed to advertise, but assuming you were, you would have a lot more, views per store ratio or whatever you want to call it, and more leverage from the ad perspective. Is advertising legal for cannabis companies in any way?
It depends on the.
They had this issue with, they were putting them on the sign, on the side of the road in California, and they're like, oh, it's interstate commerce because you're on the 10 freeway or something, and they made them take it down. Talking about ridiculous, right? But I guess they had bought all the billboards, so I'm sure Outfront Media was really pissed off about that ruling.
You can detail doctors' offices. So that's, I'm more out of a pharmacy. So you can actually send sales reps out to doctors' offices and detail them on the, the benefits.
Yeah, but can you just put an ad? You can't put an ad on Facebook, right? Facebook doesn't allow that stuff, right?
No.
Or YouTube or any of that.
I mean, I think that it's a lot of the advertising, it's digital, obviously. And because, you run into, obviously federal regulation over airwaves. So you've got, from an advertising perspective on TV or any of your traditional radio, that kind of thing. You run into the federal problem there.
What about social?
I'm sorry?
What about just social?
Yeah, social, it depends, right? It really depends on the wording of the ad, like how you can't be selling. So, I mean, there's all of these.
So you guys are helping lawyers out a lot.
around social.
You guys are like a lawyer's dream.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just say it's about
how much you spend legal fees a year?
Listen,
70 million to the government, 70 million to the lawyers.
But I mean, I will say, I mean, to Jason's point, I think that it also is about, though, that connectivity with the customer. And then it becomes, this is really a grassroots. There is a very much a grassroots angle, and an important angle to this industry for a lot of reasons that we touched on earlier, right? With respect to how these laws were developed, and the advocacy community is very involved and very engaged. And our patients or our customers, depending on if you're in a medical or rec state, come to us, come to our companies, come to our products with a very personal, marijuana journey, right? Or whether it's a bias, it's positive or negative or what have you, right? So it's a very emotionally charged industry and a very passionate customer base. And so I think that is great if you do well and you have products that they can connect with or company they can connect with, because then that virality effect happens very organically. And that's really a lot of our, best marketing comes from word of mouth, and in a community where one person, it's helpful, and then they're telling their neighbors, and then really, I mean, I personally think that the path to legalization is that, right? I mean, it's
the influencer community too. I think one of the things I think is cannabis can start really doing more through the influencer type community, and there's so many young people that so like if you say like really older people still kind of believe in the stigma, but when you hang out with like millennials or even younger, they have none of that.
But let me tell you something about old people. Hold on a minute. Because I'm in Florida, so hang on a minute about old people. The Silver Tour, which we do across the state of Florida, is specifically targeted for seniors that are in assisted living facilities to get them off of all of the prescription, et cetera, they're taking and into a more natural product. Let me tell you, those folks are just as passionate about, as any other audience about cannabis use. Once they realize that they have more control, it's enjoyable, they don't have all these awful side effects. And so really, I mean, it doesn't, I don't know. I'm not sure that I completely
buy into once you break down the stigma, then you build these communities. And see, that's kind of the crazy thing. So this is kind of my thought too, is like, if federal law changes, your customer base grows, just because I think there's a certain amount of people who still like think that way. And if you take it away, they'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. So like, as you educate the community, then there's like this bigger and bigger uptake of using it for just, casual uses or whatever. And exactly what you're saying, you go into these older communities and you have these types of, education things. One of the things that you see with a lot of older people is the cocktail of drugs that they're given based on all their different issues.
Right.
And then what happens is those don't mix well.
Right.
And so you get older people with like all these different drugs they're supposed to take every day, and they never feel right. This happens to my mom, actually. That's why I'm saying it. And it's like, and I'm just like, man, like how many things can they prescribe? Then they prescribe this to stop that, and it's the other thing you're taking. So I think, we could simplify treatments for a lot of things if we started looking at medicinal, approaches, not just with cannabis, but with other natural medicines as well.
Absolutely. And to Kim's point also, that's what I always get a kick out of when I go into dispensaries, is that you see it's the spectrum. You see younger people in their 20s, and then you see, the senior group get brought in on the bus or whatever it is. And everybody, it's like, it's sort of,
your stores also kind of cater to those different demographics based off their design and their setup. Like Trulieve, to me, very much caters to that older demographic, and the stores aren't intimidating and, like overly bright and shiny. They're really like going to the pharmacy type stores. And then you've got stores like Apothecarium in, Northern California, where you've got these tech guys who want to walk into a nice Apple store, and that's how you serve that market. And I think that's the beauty of this industry, is it's not just a niche for young people, or it's not just a niche for partiers or this or that. It's kind of fits a huge spectrum of potential users for many different reasons, from, really rarely to every day. And so it's like, and I think that's what people don't grasp. So I'm sure you've done some studies into this, like what is the addressable market in the United States for cannabis? And And like when I start thinking about it, I keep coming up with big numbers. How do you think about the TAM of cannabis in the U.S.?
Kim, I'm curious to hear your
no, Jason. No. I'm listening to you on this one.
I think it's say over the next 10 to 15 years, I think it's certainly over $100 billion in the U.S. And there's a few different ways that you can get to it. I come out.
You think 100 billion?
Yeah, I think over 100 billion.
And that's like all products, like CBD stuff too, or no?
CBD to me is not it doesn't even register on that. No, it's right. Not even CBD. CBD is
THC related product.
THC. Yeah. And you can just get there by applying the classic rule of 72.
$30 a person in America.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, if it's going to grow at 15-20% for the next 10 years, just the way compounding works.
I think they said 17 billion last year was
it ended around $20 billion.
Yeah.
But that's only in the legal markets.
We're
seeing more states.
California is still 2/3 illegal.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I think certainly in the next 10 to 15 years, I think it's easily over $100 billion. And that stacks up, it makes sense just in terms of doing a reality check versus the size of the spirits market or the pharmaceutical. I think pharmaceutical sales in the U.S. last year were like 360 billion. So I think even when you
I don't think that number's off. I don't think that number's off.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhere in there, like as you look out 5 years or whatever.
Yeah. Maybe a little longer than that. And then, and the fact is what's amazing about this industry and gets me so excited is that we know that there's demand, that there's, well over $100 billion worth of worldwide demand right now.
Right.
And we're bringing that over from the illicit market into the legal market. Right. And then we've got the tailwind of the stigma going away, and everybody more so in the last 10 years realizing that this is a product about wellness. It's not about people sitting on the couch and playing video games.
Well, we do that too. It's okay to sit on the couch.
But the point is,
bet on sports on your app, and
Yes, exactly. So and the studies that I believe that will be coming out over the next several years, I think that are going to actually show even more beneficial aspects of cannabis.
Right.
I think we're going to start seeing studies that show that cannabis has anti-cancer and anti-tumor properties. GW is working on a trial for glioblastoma,
right.
which is a horrible, horrible form of cancer, which usually takes people's lives in about a year. The phase 2 data, I think, showed that extended lives by like 300 days, which is off the charts. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. And that is not only is that going to, those products will certainly do well, but it's going to further create more of the narrative about how this is about wellness and that it's not, these are not vice products.
Look, you can almost turn anything into a vice. Like addictive behavior is addictive behavior, and unfortunately, it affects a lot of people. And I've seen people almost turn anything into a vice. Like there's people that eat. They're so healthy, they weigh like 4 pounds. Like you see them in Santa Monica running, and they're so skinny, and all they do is run. And you're like, and then they like die. You're so healthy, you're obsessed with it.
Totally.
Addictive behavior can be attributed to video games. I was just reading Kyle Kuzma's brother plays 9 hours of video games a day because he wants to be a pro gamer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that sounds more like an addiction, like probably not a great thing.
Well, the great thing is you can't consume too much cannabis. If I drink too much water here over the course of an interview and I drank,
well, they say that about LSD too,
Right,
you can't overdose on that either.
Yeah.
But you can try. And I know people who have. And one of the lessons I learned in college from the people who tried this was, if you try to overdose on cannabis versus LSD, you're way worse off on the LSD. I had friends that end up at like really in a bad place after that, experiment. With cannabis, we never had that. The worst problem we saw was we couldn't get them to do anything. So, it's like, no, I won't do that. I'm just going to stay here and watch, we used to watch like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or something crazy stuff in my fraternity. But like, let's go to a serious issue here. So now we're talking about federal law. obviously the fact that so many people of privilege are profiting off of cannabis because of the opportunity and the fact that people like us have money and capital to invest, have the lawyers, you know, I don't think you can right all the wrongs just by like giving cannabis licenses to people of color, let's say. Like that doesn't right the wrongs. Although I think it helps. Like I know you guys are very involved with a couple social equity programs that I wanted to talk about today. You know, what's the program you guys are really into? You guys support the last, what is it called?
Last Prisoners Project.
Yeah, the Last Prisoners Project. And you guys are both working really hard on this project. I know you put a lot of time into these social equity issues because not only because it's right, because you care. And like, to me, like, I don't see the way I look at race is I kind of think race is an annoying way to look at people. Like we're all the same race is the way I look at it. We're humans. Okay. And so like we have to make right for wrongs in the past and we've got to not continue them. And cannabis laws are laws that are put in place to control society and to have the ability to arrest people for no reason, essentially. And it's been used disproportionately against the African-American community. I mean, ever since the laws were created. Mm-hmm. And in fact, they're incredibly effective laws for disrupting people's lives who are of people of color. And especially, you know, we've seen this disproportionately used in the inner cities, cities like New York, Philadelphia, LA. And so now we see a lot of these, like I think in LA, they expunged 29,000 people's records. I think it was LA or San Diego just the other day. And I was just thinking about like 29,000 people just got a break, you know, and like, you know, you're 19 and you sell some weed and you get busted by some cop, you know, it's a mistake, but like, come on, you know, like ruining people's lives over this stuff. A lot of times, you know, let's be real, they plant the evidence or whatever they need to do to arrest people they want to arrest. So what are you guys doing to help solve this problem?
Sure. Camille.
Okay. So, you know, to your point, it's a huge problem, right? And, you know, one of the things that I think is really important for I think both Jason and I is to make sure that we're not just talking the talk, but that we're walking the walk. And that starts within our own companies. And so I think that, you know, to have a discussion around, you know, systematic racism and social justice and social equity without first being able to, you know, look internally at our companies and representation within our companies, I think is starting from maybe an authentic place. And so, you know, for us, you know, obviously I'm a female CEO and, you know, representation is very, very important to our core values. We decided very early on, our first investment was in our cultivation and production facilities, which in our majority minority community in Florida. Same thing in Massachusetts, so that our employment base, right, could naturally pull from those communities that we most wanted to provide opportunity to. When you look at our statistics across our company, about 40% minority employment. We actually are 50% female male split. So I'm really proud of both of those things, but we also measure at all levels, to your point. So it's not just, you know, the low level employment, but it's also at management. It's also on our C-suite and, you know, on our board, which we have some work to do, which we're currently doing now. And so I think being able to take a look in the mirror at our companies and the structure of our companies is really, really important. And I really want to make sure that we as an industry are having that conversation first, before we, you know, to your point, right, try and solve kind of everyone else. So let's make sure that we're doing our own and keeping our own house, have our own house in order. You know, and there's always room for improvement there, of course. Now, in terms of externally, very early on, we formed a strategic partnership with Minorities for Medical Marijuana and Roz McCarthy. She's fantastic, and so we partner with them across the U.S. on different initiatives. And Jason and I recently partnered with Last Prisoner Project, which is an organization that, you know, works to right the injustices of marijuana incarcerations, and then also helps those prisoners reestablish themselves once they've been released. And so it's really a wonderful organization. And then it's not just about the court case, it's also about the person as a human and
getting proper representation.
That's right. That's right. And then we also run expungement clinics across the markets that we operate in.
Great. That's
many
great.
states have programs where folks can get expunged. However, it does take.
It's a pain.
It's a process, right?
Yeah.
And so making sure that that we're there on the front lines in a real way. And then I would say, finally, just looking for and empowering, minority businesses, and we have a whole minority contractor, program in terms of how we're choosing to do business in communities, and really again holding ourselves accountable.
So you're really looking at every layer of your business from a position of like, are we running this business for social equity, not at the expense of profit, but like when we look at ourselves, are we happy with what we see across the board? And I think that's great.
Yeah. The last thing I would just say,
I do the same thing. Like we've been doing the same thing too. I mean, I have a lot less employees, but like, you start to look at all the different people you do business with, all the different people you hire, and you're saying, and you have to have a conscious effort. Like, am I really looking at all the potential candidates that I could be looking at, or am I really just looking at this narrow group of people that always seems to apply for the jobs? And what happens, and this is what's happened in Hollywood too, ever since they got rid of the sort of old white man cabal and the Me Too movement and the diversity movements in Hollywood, we've seen an incredible upgrade in the quality of the projects we've seen out of Hollywood recently. I mean, some great stories being told. I just watched this Billie Holiday, United States versus Billie Holiday, which really got me going, because you can see how they use drug laws, in this case heroin laws, to really persecute Billie Holiday, one of the greatest singers of all time, and mostly because of her music being, a direct attack, especially this one song, on lynching. And it's a really haunting song, Strange Fruit is a beautiful but haunting song, and I can totally see why people, the establishment was threatened by it. But you can see exactly how they use these drug laws to destroy people's lives, and really innocent people who need help more than anything else. And that, I think, it's great that you're looking at your business on that level, but also like, what else can we do within our communities to support things? Like my brother does a lot of pro bono legal work. He's a litigator, and he's been trying to get somebody off, death row in Angola prison in Georgia. Okay. So I hear the stories about what it's like to go to Angola. And, he's like the city boy Jewish lawyer showing up at Angola. They hate him, because he's trying to help a murderer, and the guy did murder somebody. It's just like, he didn't deserve the death penalty. Why? Well, because his lawyer literally slept through the whole trial, like slept in the court. And so when you think about social equity, and like when I was in college, a couple kids got busted for weed. Their rich lawyer dad hires a rich lawyer. They get it expunged after 6 months, blah, blah, blah. While another kid might have gone to Rikers Island for 5 years for the same thing. Right. And why? They just didn't have a lawyer, and literally just providing legal representation for people changes the game.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say though, just to finish that thought, I mean, it is important, and certainly that work, right, with respect to trying to equalize from a system perspective to the best that we can. Also, though, I do think that creating opportunity for participation in the now legal market is also extremely important. Right. And I think that, I know the comment earlier, you can't just give out licenses. I completely agree with that, because I think the problem is that a lot of times folks get a license, but then they don't have the funding that a normal small business, certainly a normal minority or women-owned small business would normally get in this country through access to the SBA loan program or what have you, right? Those sources aren't available. And so, a license without funding or a mechanism for rational capital to build that business is another, big issue. So at the federal level, which I think it's important to talk about, all of the talk around and hopefully which will turn into action around social justice needs to be looked at very holistically. We need to make sure that we're setting folks up for success so that there is real true opportunity in this country for folks that aren't and don't look like, anyone on this call to actually be successful in the business. And I think that's going to take to all of our point, right? I think a little bit more thoughtfulness than just, it's not necessarily
here we legalize it. Here's a license. Go make money. I think your point is extremely valid. Like this, see, for people like us, like, let's be real. It's easy for us to get started in business because we've been doing it. Okay. So like the businesses are hard to start and run, and it doesn't matter. Like cannabis isn't just a home run for all the reasons you just said. So like, if I just give minority owners licenses and don't give them ability to raise capital and build a real organization or any of the know-how or resources that people like us get, like, it is essentially, you're almost hurting them because you're putting them out of business as quickly as you're putting them in business, and somebody else buys their license. Right. So it's like and that's the nice thing about you guys having public companies too. Nothing is stopping anybody from being an investor in your companies. Doesn't matter what race you are. Right. So we can take advantage of that. But there's also, like, if we want to have, opportunities created, and I wouldn't just say in cannabis, I would say in general, if we want to improve our society, we need to create these resources on a local level for all types of business owners to get opportunities and help and financing and training to build a business, versus saying, oh, here's a license, or here's our half-hearted attempt at solving like a 150-year-old problem.
Well, Jason's doing a great job. I mean, Jason, talk about your fund that you just launched.
Yeah, you just started a fund, huh, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, so Chris Weber and I, the famous NBA All-Star, we've been talking for the last 3 months, and we both realized after pretty much one meeting that this was an important cause for both of us. Because there are, I think about 40,000 people that are in jail right now for cannabis offenses.
Are you talking state or federal?
Federally, there are 40,000.
So right now, there's 40,000 people in jail on federal level for cannabis.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot of people.
So we have that issue that and most of them are black. And they've been
what a surprise, right?
Most of they've certainly been disproportionately arrested. But now the additional issue is that I believe that less than 10% of the legal state level programs are owned by people of color.
Right.
So they're also not being they're being arrested more often, and they're not being represented in the legal industry to the extent that they should be. So Chris and I decided to launch and we'll be officially launching it and being able to take investment in the next 4 weeks or so. We announced that we are launching a $100 million cannabis impact fund. It'll be like a private equity fund, and while we know that this
is like a for-profit private equity fund where your goal is really to invest and help operate minority-run cannabis businesses.
Absolutely, because we feel like there's a lot of people that need funding, but they also need, exactly what you're just talking about. They need support. They don't necessarily have the same experience.
Well, and what I've seen is there's a huge entrepreneurial spirit in the African American community. Like, they're entrepreneurs. Like, that's not the issue. Okay, but the issue is like, okay, now I've launched my business. When you start looking for capital and you start looking for like the type of know-how to get to like the second level, that's where I think it's real tough. And that's why what you're doing is so awesome, because with the operational expertise that you have and your team, you can make the investments, but then really help people get to the next level. Because I think a lot of people can get to the first level, but it's that second level that really gets you, and so it's wonderful, this approach.
Yeah, thank you. So and the thing is, like, this is really hard, even even for Kim and for me and for all the other people that are in the industry that have been able to raise money. It's still difficult because of all the extra hoops you have to jump through. It's even harder for people that don't have the network and can't go and be able to raise money relatively quickly, or don't have the benefit of all the mistakes that we've all made over the last couple of years
operational experience is hugely valuable just because there's so many things to navigate.
Absolutely. And I truly believe when you look at a lot of companies that are doing well, the public companies that are doing well versus the ones that aren't, it just comes down to, it's like Bill Belichick, and I hate the Patriots because I'm a Jets fan, but Bill Belichick, their motto was just do your job. And I truly believe that it's not like this industry is so hard that if you don't just do your job, you can't do well. But, people need to know that they need the benefit of our experience to tell them, not to make the same mistakes that we made. So,
well, that's why I'm investing with you guys. Like when this all started, I looked to start a dispensary or something. And I went on the California, Cannabis Board website. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to apply for this thing. And maybe we'll start this cannabis business. And the minute I started, I was like, boy, better like put aside $500,000 for legal fees, and I was just like, forget this, it's just not easy to do. Like, not at all. And so there's people like you guys who dived in early, learned the business, figured out how to navigate all the pitfalls. It's a lot easier to invest with people who are doing it. And that's why I think this fund will have so much success, because I think there's some great ideas and great things coming out of a lot of the different communities involved with cannabis. But it's like, how do I make this actually happen? That's actually the hardest part about business. I tell people this all the time because I get pitched great ideas all the time. Yeah. And I love the ideas, but I'm like, okay, well, like, what's step 2? So how do you bring this to market? Or have you checked to see if somebody else, a lot of good ideas somebody else is already doing, like things like that. And they go, oh, I didn't think about that part. And I was like, listen, the business part is actually the hard part. Like there's tons of ideas we can pursue, but what's a good business? Where's their margin? That's another reason I like cannabis. So where do you see federal, let's leave with this part of the discussion. I really appreciate you guys' time today. I know you guys are busy executives, but I also feel that there's a huge amount of desire to learn more about this industry. And we wanted to bring it to people because I don't think the traditional media does a good job bringing the story to people right now. I think some people are starting to do it in certain channels, but I think in general, the amount of effort put into learning about this industry right now has been minimal. So that's why we're here, and we're going to keep doing this. So federal law, we've got the Safe Banking Act. This is really just a way for people like me to do business with people like you, which I'm technically not allowed to. So if the Safe Banking Act passes, you can open up a bank account normally and have an investment account and have a 401k for your employees.
Well, we already have a lot of that. In terms of 401ks, I think in Trulieve, you guys just launched a 401k as well, right?
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. To me, sorry to interrupt, but to me, it's more.
Listen, call me next time you need a 401k.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it's more about being able to have U.S. banks raise money for you or lend to you, and not have to pay.
And be on the U.S. exchanges too, right? With this, does the Safe Banking Act allow you to be on the NASDAQ or the NYSE?
Not the way it was envisioned last year. Supposedly, there's a better chance that it could be that the newer version could be in there.
All right, audience, we need to start tweeting these politicians. Enough of this nonsense. Yeah. Okay, we got to start tweeting these politicians. We need to list amazing U.S. companies in the U.S. so American investors can actually benefit from the growth of an American industry. Okay, we need to start tweeting everybody. We're going to start doing this because this is really getting annoying to me. So the Safe Banking Act really just lets you like open a checking account.
No, you should be able to, have them raise your money.
We could take out a mortgage. We could get normalized cost of capital from different debt.
But nothing to do with listing.
So maybe not. It depends on how it's worded in the final version, right? And really, the U.S. exchanges, right? It's all going to depend on the NASDAQ and NYSE interpretation of the law, and when they get comfortable as organizations, right, that the risk profile works for them. I think.
Well, they're comfortable with utter garbage like GameStop.
There's a couple passed, right? So if for example, there's a bill pending right now for research that would knock it down a level on the schedule, that would be enough. Right. It could be
Schedule 2. If it goes to Schedule 2, then you can list.
Yes, that should be enough for the exchanges to be comfortable.
Is that in the House right now?
That's in the House. It was proposed by a Florida Congress member, actually. Stubbe is his last name.
Do you guys have a PAC?
No. Do we have a PAC?
So maybe we need a cannabis PAC because that works. I can tell you what the securities industry did when they didn't like what was going on with DOL before Trump. So they were changing all the laws. So they started these PACs, securities industries PACs.
Yep.
And the laws went away. It was really weird how that works.
Yeah. Well,
so
right now
maybe
we just need them to
we need
pass. We need them to pass safe banking so that we can have one piece of policy, this standalone piece of cannabis policy that actually has bipartisan support and it passes. And then I think that the rest will kind of begin to follow, but at least it relieves some of it. And I think that that's a path actually to SBA funding for some of these small businesses that we've been talking about. I think it's a dual track. I think that opens up minority participation, gets more folks involved in that part of the conversation, which is going to be extremely important as we think about overall and total reform. So, I think that that's, a quick path potentially.
So it's better if they just downgrade the schedules, is the way I hear it.
There's potentially issues with that as well, though. So, I mean, it gets a little dicey. But if they downgrade,
you're still a lawyer, Kim.
Yeah, I know. I'm recovering. So this is what I'm telling you. It's my 9-step program.
I know.
If they take it down one level and it's just for research, right? Then maybe you take some of the wind out of the sails for more robust reform.
Right.
Is the challenge.
See, I'm like, we should just purely just legalize it and be done.
Because we need to stop arresting people. Because even if it gets
legalize the drug,
it's
legal.
Yes.
Okay. Alcohol, it's legal. Cannabis, not legal. Cigarettes, 500,000 dead a year, every year, legal. Okay. Cannabis, not legal. Okay. Handguns, machine guns with huge clips of armor-piercing rounds, legal. Cannabis, illegal.
Serious. Yeah.
Okay? It's insane. It's insanity. The only answer is legalization. This is all bullshit. It's just like, oh, we're going to tiptoe around. We're going to like get this law passed and this law passed because a bunch of old white men don't want to get rid of their Jim Crow law. I get it. But it's got to end. You guys are too nice. It's like, it's got to end. I started this journey 30 years ago. It's like, when will cannabis be legal? 30 years ago, and I thought it should be legal. And it's like, it's not 30 years later.
Right.
30 years later.
I think people are on the clock though, right? There were a lot of promises that were made this last campaign cycle. And so I think that, they're on the clock. And
we need to get people involved. We need to get people involved and say, look, this needs to end. This hypocrisy needs to end. Just like end this stupid law. It's not heroin. Everybody knows it. Okay. And it's like, just end it, what we saw, I think we've seen 4 or 5 senior Republicans, one today, said that they're not going to run in 2022. And I think we're going to see much more progressive, hopefully, then I read that the Socialist Party took over the Democrats in Nevada, which I'm like, that doesn't help either. Between the socialists and the extremists here, like, God forbid you're just a moderate in this country anymore, And it's really tough because I think most people are kind of in the middle somewhere, and we're being whipped around by the edges, but I think if we really focus, this is a simple thing that's bipartisan that benefits everybody.
That's right. That's right. I mean, well, look at the last election. I mean, we had Mississippi pass a medical cannabis overwhelmingly, right? I mean, so
West Virginia.
Yeah, West Virginia. I mean, you've got some, historically.
There's not even a Democrat in West Virginia. There's like not one. I don't think.
So, I mean, it is becoming more and more ridiculous. And I guess that's the point, right? I mean, I think that the ridiculous meter is going to tilt to some point where, there's going to be a bill that comes up and everyone's just going to look at each other and say, what are we doing? Right. I mean, this is just, it's time. So, and I think
it's time for the cannabis pack. We just need a cannabis pack. These things work. I mean, I have to say, I saw it in my own industry and I saw them. They just reached out to everybody, said, donate $100. If everybody just donates $100 into the pack, you hire a few people, they start hassling these guys and stuff gets done. I don't know. I think it's worth it.
I'm in for 100.
Yeah.
100. I look at 100 from you.
That's what you just said.
They get 100 per dispensary, maybe. I don't know. Why don't we leave it at that? I really want to thank. This was great. I mean, like, this was probably one of the better discussions I've ever had about what the opportunity is, what are the challenges, and what great companies you guys have built. Like, it's super cool. Like, I think a lot of people don't really understand, like, when they buy a stock, it's like, oh, it's a stock. And I was like, no, this is a company. And there's people who run this company, and you're betting on these people. And one of the things that I think people learn today is what great executives you both are and running your businesses. And as an investor, what I do, this is what I look for. You know, I look for transparency. You guys have been super awesome and transparent. I look for well-run businesses. I look for great marketing. You know, I look for great products and services, and I look for a great stock and people who understand how to make money. And you guys have all those qualities. And I think it presents a great opportunity for investors. Of course, there's risk involved with all investments like cannabis. Many things can go wrong. Of course, there's high risk involved with anything with high return. But I think for investors who are patient, who bide their time, when you think about 5 years from now, where Kim and Jason are going to be and where their businesses will be, I think it's one of the greatest opportunities for investors in the stock market today, as good as green energy or many of the other areas we're investing in, which we're also very bullish on. Cannabis, I think, is a 10x plus opportunity over the next 5 years. So, you know, learn more about these companies, do your own research. Trulieve, great company. TerrAscend, great company. Thank you, Kim and Jason, for your time. Hashtag MSO gang. Start tweeting your congressman about these things. You know, they pay attention to their Twitters. They want to do what's right for the people that they represent, but they have to know what the people want. And if you don't participate in the political process, you cannot get the results you want. Okay. And I proved it again this year by getting rid of Trump. Okay. We got rid of Trump. I don't know. Maybe you like Trump because you're a Florida person, but that's okay. But I didn't think he was good for the country. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. I still like you if you don't agree with me. But it shows that if people work hard in the political process, what we saw in Georgia, you know, what we saw in Nevada, what we've seen in any state, that you can make change in our political process if you put effort in. And that's what needs to happen here. So I need all of you. If you smoke cannabis, if you're a cannabis fan, you, God forbid you tweet something and support the cannabis industry. And boy, I think we can make change a lot quicker if people get involved. So thanks for your time. Have a great day, everybody. Hopefully the market's still up today. It was good when I started. And most importantly, be safe. Wear a mask, and we're almost done with COVID. So, you know, I'm very excited about the future, and hopefully we'll all be able to do this again soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.